It's underway in the Constitutional Court to hear if spanking your children is permitted. Last year, the South Gauteng High Court ruled that corporal punishment was illegal even in private. The country's highest court is now hearing an appeal by rights group Freedom of Religion. The organization believes that sparing the rod to spare your child will do more harm than good. eNCA reporter Janke Tolmay is at Constitution Hill tracking the story for us this afternoon. Hi there, Janke. It's been a few hours now into this hearing. Take us through the arguments so far.
Well, we've heard from the applicant and why they believe that the judgment by the High Court should be overturned. What they're basically saying is the fact that they are 100% against the abuse of children, but they say they are for the rights of parents to determine what is in the best interest of their children, and if they want to have the option to use what they didn't want to call it a corporal punishment, but reasonable chastisement to discipline their children. They're saying that it's not just, for example, religious groups, especially Christians who believe in this, but they say there's even other people that believe that if it is used in a moderate and reasonable way, they do think that it is in the best interest of the children and a way to discipline them in the household. Obviously, we heard the counter arguments from the first and second respondent. That was the Department of Justice and Social Development. They maintain that any form of violence, as they put it, is against the rights of the child and is not in the best interest of the child. But we did hear from Freedom of Religion in South Africa saying that using the word even violence is misleading because it would be used in a reasonable way. But obviously it's kind of a grey area that actually got a lot of questions from the justices here today about when and how do you determine what is reasonable in a case like this.
Let's talk about the very definition of reasonable chastisement, because what would be problematic is what is reasonable to Janke may not necessarily be reasonable to me. So how has this rights group, this religious group, then responded to that bit of argument?
To be honest, I think they did have trouble responding to specifically those type of questions from the judges. We heard from Justice Ferdinand saying that if you slap a child, is that not common assault? And then the counsel for the organisation replied that it depends basically at the end of the day. But other arguments again saying that is it different if you hit a child who is younger than 2 years old or someone who is already a teenager who might react in an aggressive way. So they're saying that it isn't a one-size-fits-all solution, but what the organisation maintains is that the parents should have the opportunity to decide. But obviously they're saying that you're going to say that if you just leave it in the hands of the parents, we've seen, for example, the case in the High Court where the father was later found guilty of common assault, even though he maintained that it was because he was just disciplining his child. But they maintain that everything in society is basically put in the hands of the parents, and they need to have this opportunity to judge. But obviously, as I've mentioned, it is a difficult thing to say that it's one size fits all, because how do you determine what is not necessarily just justifiable in the type of punishment to give to the child, but also what type of offence would be justified to be able to say that we need to use, even if it's a moderate chastisement against the child, as a form of discipline.
But another sticking point, Janke, is if the Constitutional Court does indeed go ahead and confirm that it is wrong to spank your child in the home, it is unlawful, the policing and enforcement of the law around that would be rather tricky given the millions of families in this country. Has there been any discussion today around that particular element?
Well, they're saying they think even with the law in place at the moment, you might have a lot of cases where parents actually exceed those boundaries of what is determined to be justifiable or moderate and reasonable chastisement. And those cases would never end up in court because at the moment they would just say that it was justifiable because of they were just disciplining their children. So what they're saying at the moment is the protection of children when it comes to law should be more and not less. So it will not help the case of children to actually take that away or rather leave that in place because it's going to make the protection of children basically less. What they're saying is it needs to be taken away. There shouldn't even be the option for parents to go to court to say that it was in defense, it was a common law of defense because they were disciplining the child. So obviously it is going to be quite difficult, but they're saying why not make the protection more for
Very
children?
quickly, how much longer do we expect today's arguments to continue, Janke, and when do we expect that the court might be able to put this matter to rest?
Well, as I've mentioned, we've already heard from the applicants and the two main respondents. There's about then 5 friends of the courts left who will have to make their arguments. But they did wrap it up quite quickly, so we should be able to get to the end of this matter, or arguments at least at the end of today. When exactly judgment will come out, we'll have to see and wait. It's not only an emotive subject, but it's obviously going to be a pretty a crucial one that the justices will have to take their time to ensure that they do consider all sides of the argument before they deliver judgment.
Janke Tolmay, eNCA reporter, out for us at the Constitutional Court this afternoon. We will continue to touch base with Janke throughout the afternoon, but we'll stay with that story a while longer because in our Twitter poll earlier, we asked you if you thought it was fine to spank your children. 85% of users on Twitter felt that it was okay, while only 15% are opposed to spanking children. So it'll be interesting to see the reactions from the public once the Constitutional Court has made a final pronouncement on this issue. Coming up